If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address.
Jasmine Crockett is being called out by other elected officials for her comments last Saturday at a human rights campaign event.
Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot mess.
Referring to Governor Greg Abbott as Hot Wheels.
Well, I guess she showed him. This was counterproductive for two reasons. First of all, Jasmine wound up getting herself dinged in the white media, even by her so-called supporters, because she ridiculed the disabled. Though in Greg Abbott's case, I think mentally disabled is what he qualifies as. But she should have been able to see that one from a mile away. But what's more important than that is this didn't accomplish anything. Sure, she's taking shots at Greg Abbott. Obviously, I approve of that in and of itself. He's filth. I can't even call him human filth. He's just filth. But my problem is very similar to what happened with Al Green. This isn't doing anything. And what a surprise, Al Green is from Texas, just like this woman is. Remember, America's falling over the abyss into fascism. And what's Jasmine Crockett's response while this unprecedented catastrophe is going on? She's putting out Kendrick Lamar memes and she's calling a racist governor Hot Wheels. Now, I'm not a legislator. I'm not in a position to write or influence national policy, but Jasmine Crockett is. And for her to be doing this at a time like this, what that means is this is all she or the Democrats intend to do. This is their strategy for 2026. They're going to get into a name-calling contest with the Republicans. This is Jasmine Crockett once again doing her silly I'm the sassiest mouth in the room routine. She looks like a clown and she's apparently content to play the part. Did she point out the fact that Abbott ignored the law and common decency so he could allow a white nationalist murderer to be let out of prison? A murderer who he knew was guilty as hell? Did she say even a word about that? Oh, doesn't matter. She got him told. Oh, look what she really got in a good dig on him. Well, he wasn't there, so it doesn't count. And you will have the DNC shills and plants who are going to attempt to argue you and me down and say, well, this is Democrats doing something. She's fighting back. We're doing something. When we begin reminding people that Democrats aren't actually offering anything, these are the clowns who will point to this clown and say, well, see, Democrats is fighting back. This is not fighting back. This is just making a fool of yourself. Democrats are out of power because for 60 years they refused to offer their base, the black vote, anything. Hell, they refused to do anything even for the white part of their base. Pathetic gestures like Barack Obama's presidency, which was nothing more than a dark face of white power, this is what the Democrats thought was going to be a workaround for their refusal to do what the base needs. And giving more airtime to Jasmine Crockett, apparently that's the next act in this little bit of political theater. See, we, the black vote, we showed the Democrats that we weren't fooled by Kamala Harris. We recognize that she's not one of us. She would never be and could never be. We saw her as what she was, with no connection to us whatsoever. So this is what Democrats are doing next. They're bringing in this fool, who I guess they figure is going to have a little bit more credibility. At least she's not the child of immigrants that we know of. And she's going to get in front of the cameras, snap her fingers, roll her neck, and act like a black version of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Except Greene actually offered her racist constituents what they wanted. So with Jasmine Crockett, you get all the stupid antics, but absolutely nothing of substance. If Jasmine Crockett really wanted to own Marjorie Greene, then she would be putting a real agenda on the table to benefit the base. But we already know what the Democrats' game plan is. They intend to sit back, watch as Trump creates problems and engages in all kinds of performative extremism, and his degenerate supporters will be unabashed racist and they'll pull all kinds of stupid, bigoted stunts in the open. And then Democrats hope that the base, who they've ignored for decades, will do what they did back in 2020, and that is to forget all about what the Democrats have not done for us for years, and instead we gotta hold our nose and return to the polls to vote the Republicans out just to stick it to them. And while the Republicans certainly deserve it, the problem is you don't want to just do something. You want to do something that benefits you. You better remember what scum like Jim Himes said. Because while Jasmine Crockett's preening for the cameras like an idiot, Jim Himes actually speaks for the white leaders of the party. And he made it a point to blame black people for the Democratic Party's failures. See, the Democratic leadership, they're not talking about what they're going to offer black people. Instead, they're saying Democrats have to move more towards the right because we got all of these far leftists here who are causing us problems, costing us elections. Well, if that's the case, the Democrats want to move to the right, they can move all the way to the right. Just go ahead and officially call themselves Republicans and stop bothering us at all. Trump, by the way, was asked about Jasmine Crockett's remarks, and the orange man said, "I don't imagine the Democrats are going to have a person like that running their party." Interesting words, especially coming from him. He probably remembers that Jim Clyburn's boy, Jamie Harrison, had been head of the DNC, and that's a large part of why Trump's back in the White House. So even Trump can see that Jasmine Crockett's clearly campaigning for a higher spot in the DNC. It's obvious even to him what spot she wants and how she thinks she's going to get it, and he's looking and going, this ain't going to work. Jasmine Crockett is the latest person of color to call themselves using the Obama-Kamala playbook, one that only worked for Barack Obama, by the way. You start a catfight on camera with the Republicans, rinse, repeat. You know, I'm no fan of Howard Dean. That screwball took shots at the black media, and the world's better off without that creep in politics or the public eye. Though in this instance, you gotta give the devil his due. When he became DNC chair back in 2005, Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. And when Howard Dean left as DNC chair in 2009, the Democrats had retaken all three. Dean is credited with getting Democrats on the so-called 50-state strategy. That means Democrats would stop trying to be the party of the coast and start actually competing for voters in so-called flyover states. I remember when Dean became DNC chairman, I felt that he was going to be probably doing things differently because I saw that his first stop was in Mississippi. And unlike Rahm Emanuel, at least Dean wasn't looking around for carry Republicans. He was trying to find out what races Democrats would win in those red states. He was trying to weaken Republicans in their own homes. And of course, that laid the groundwork for what Obama would do 3 years later, 50-state strategy, competing in what had been red states, many of which he flipped, not once, but twice, at least for his presidential election. Now, if that's what a two-bit buffoon like Dean was able to do as DNC chair, it just goes to show that Democrats' electoral defeats are self-inflicted wounds. They have no one to blame but themselves, and yet they're making it a point to blame us. But there's also something else that I think needs to be commented on. When you look at the background that Jasmine Crockett's standing in front of, what do you see? You see that she was talking to a group called Human Rights Campaign. Now, if you're a listener to the black media, especially my morning briefings, you know I've already told you about these guys years ago. Human Rights Campaign tried to do some clout chasing during the 2020 uprisings, and the white media couldn't wait to give them FaceTime, to go ahead and talk to them, to ask them what they thought about what black people were doing, because they knew that these guys wouldn't make any waves. And who is Human Rights Campaign? As I explained in my 2020 video about them, they describe themselves as the largest civil rights organization working to achieve equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Americans. So this is an LGBT advocacy group. They're not advocating black anything, and yet the white media wanted to talk to them about the 2020 uprisings, which were racial in nature. But hey, when it comes to black people, the white media always lets any and every unqualified person speak so that everybody can go ahead and say what black people apparently believe, or they can just talk about us. They always give FaceTime people so you can do that. This is who Jasmine Crockett was talking to when she did this. Now, was she there because she's trying to come out, as they say? Who knows? But one thing's for sure. Neither Human Rights Campaign nor Jasmine Crockett has done anything for reparations or to force Democrats to do what we want. We don't need any more cheerleaders for a political party that's insulted us, ignored us, told us they're not going to do anything for us, and then has the nerve to demand our vote. Oh, and on a side note, no, Human Rights Campaign didn't say anything about Abbott pardoning an anti-black race killer either. Human Rights Campaign isn't campaigning for us. They only see human rights abuses when it's their group that they're advocating for. Or they'll pretend to care about us, at least tangentially, when they think that they can get some FaceTime to promote their own organization. So everything about what Jasmine Crockett did was wrong. One sock puppet talking to another sock puppet. Jasmine Crockett's just doing whatever she can to get attention for herself, but she's just trying to climb the ladder, and it says a lot about the Democrats that this is what she thinks is going to work. No matter what the white media tries to tell you, Democrats are lying when they claim that their base is losing them elections. The base is the only thing that keeps the Democrats from going completely extinct. Their problem is that the base is at the point now where they're finally sick and tired of hearing excuses, and they're making their demands and sticking to their guns. What's happening now is you got a critical mass of the people who are demanding transformative changes from the Democrats, and they're no longer accepting IOUs or excuses from the Democrats about why they can't do it. All the times that we made Democrats the majority in Congress and handed them the White House at the same time, the first 2 years of both Obama's and Biden's presidencies, they had complete control of the levers of power. And what did they do with it? Nothing for us. And after people got sick and tired of hearing what they weren't going to get, now they're out of power and they're saying, well, these far leftists who did it to us. Jasmine Crockett should be speaking on that, but of course she won't. This is a political machine she's trying to advance herself in, and you can't do that telling the truth. Democrats are angry as hell that they can't win because the base is no longer being taken for granted. They're sitting here trying to say, we can't win elections, Democrats. We're not going to be able to win elections. That's a lie. What Democrats really mean is that they can't ignore their base anymore and win elections, because that's what they've been doing. What they really mean is Democrats can't be the party of sucking up to corporations and ignoring the black working class and then expect those people to vote for them. They can't show up offering black voters nothing and get elected. That's what they're really saying. That's the Democrats' problem. And they're determined, hell-bound, and psychopathically devoted to this failed course of action. And notice that none of the Democrats are pulling Jasmine Crockett's coat or telling her you got to knock these antics off. At least they're not doing it yet. But they're the ones who put her up to it in the first place. She's being pushed forward so the white media and the DNC can claim, hey, this is the face of black political leadership. Oh, this sassy hoochie mama here. And the same thing went for the so-called squad. These strutting geese will preen for the cameras, but they're not about to actually leverage their numbers to demand anything for the people who put them in office. It's the same empty inside the Beltway games, bickering and arguing, but only about the Democrats' same handful of empty pet projects and pet issues. Nothing of substance. And that's what they want. They want to make sure that the totality of any political discourse, especially in the black community, is confined only to this handful of meaningless pet issues for the Democrats. Nothing that's actually going to change the status quo. That's why the Republicans are in power, and that's why Jasmine Crockett's sitting here working on her one-liners. Now compare what she did and what the squad did to what Matt Gaetz did. That disgusting excuse for a human being, he and that handful of reprobates he had standing with him, they held the entire Republican leadership hostage and didn't care. In fact, they got their own speaker, Kevin McCarthy, booted out of power. Now, Gaetz wound up ostracized by other Republicans, at least for a few months. Did you know that the GOP was so put out with his behavior and his public attacks on McCarthy that during a House meeting, they actually blocked Gaetz from being able to use the GOP's microphone? That's the one on their side of the chamber. They did that deliberately so that he would be forced to have to stand in front of the Democratic side of the chamber, and Republicans could go on Fox News and say, see, he's with the Democrats now. That's what they did to Gaetz. But Gaetz refused to relent because he knew that the rank-and-file racist Republican voters were with him, so he just continued. And ultimately, he got what he wanted. And this is what happened after the January 6th insurrection. So Republicans, when it comes to their base, they don't back down, they triple down. You don't ever see them attacking their base or saying, we're carrying all the way to that Blue Lives Matter stuff. We can't do the back the badge anymore, man. How the world are we going to deny being a police state when we're standing up for the biggest thugs in the country? We can't do that. All of that January 6th stuff, all of that MAGA nonsense, we're carrying all that way. We just can't do it anymore. We're just going to keep losing elections in perpetuity if we keep it up. They didn't do that. And they also didn't waste their time working on their one-liners about Joe Biden. See, Trump ran a different campaign rhetorically than the one he did in the past. Sure, working on your insults and your zingers about the Democrats, that may be something that gets some applause, throwing some red meat to the base, but ultimately what's going to get them to turn out to vote is you got to make sure that they know what's going to happen this time around. It has to be very clear exactly what the policy is going to be, what the agenda is going to be. Trump made it crystal clear exactly what the agenda would be. Mass deportations, and it's going to be the Trump revenge tour. Now, for these psychologically anemic Trump supporters, the MAGA crowd, for them, that's pretty much what they were wanting. They wanted him to validate their own feelings of inadequacy that they've carried, especially since Obama became president. They're still trying to erase the memory of that and assure themselves that white power is on the march and can do whatever it wants, and that's part of what all of this performative extremism is rooted in. They haven't gotten over it, and they're not going to. And instead of Democrats tripling down and saying, you know what, we are going to reinforce every single one of these institutions and laws and legal precedents that the Republicans have attacked, especially as it comes to black people, all this performative extremism that the Republicans have done, we're going to make them pay for it in full. Instead, the Democrats have said, no, we got to stop all of this stuff from you people who are making demands. We can't win elections with you guys. Well, you know what? I wouldn't want the Democrats to be in power if this is how they're going to regard me. You want me to put you in office, but you got nothing but contempt for me? Well, hell, from the sound of that, hey, you're too good to represent me? That's just as well, because I'm too good to vote for you. It's just ridiculous. You got the Republicans who understand that power in the House of Representatives is down to a razor-thin margin, and it is the true lunatics on their side of the aisle who have decided they're going to pull every stunt imaginable to try to leverage that. But then again, you can't blame them for actually using a caucus the way that it's supposed to be used. It's supposed to be used as a way of putting a block vote together and saying you want to get something done, we can either give you the critical mass to get legislation passed or we can make it impossible. That's what Gates and his flunkies did, and it worked. Now here's my question. How come the Congressional Black Caucus has never done that? They're concerned and hot and bothered about all things immigration, but they don't actually take a stand on anything. And Jasmine Crockett, same thing, and the squad, same thing. See, if the only people who are willing to put their foot down and leverage their votes as a group happens to be the irrational right, you can't complain when people look and go, man, these guys who are supposed to be the reasonable people in the room, the Democrats, these guys don't do anything at all. The only ones willing to do anything are the irrational right. Next thing you know, you'll get people trying to wonder if they can make a deal with the MAGA crowd simply because you couldn't get anything from the Democrats. That's the problem. Democrats as a group, or as separate caucuses within the party, or as individuals, refuse to actually take a stand or to face up to their failures. So if there's anybody out there who actually cares about Jasmine Crockett, you need to tell her to save the one-liners. We don't need to see how sharp her tongue can be. We need to see how dedicated she is to doing what the Democrats have failed to do, and that's to actually offer the voters what they've demanded. The entire reason that people like Crockett have to contend with the Gregg Abbotts of this world is because the Democrats decided to do nothing while the racists actually are offering their voters something. And until people like Crockett learn that lesson, they're the ones who need to have a seat. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Charlie's Painting, Ginger Vine, Reasonable Dude, Roxanne Allen, and Keith LaRue. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.